Om Shahana Bhavatu Shahano Bhunaktu Shahabirjam Karvavahai Tejashina Bodhitamastu Ma Vidvishabhai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Now it is over to Shreyashi. Please start.
Thank you. Thank you, sir. Good evening, everybody. So my screen is visible to you.
Yes, it is visible.
Okay. Okay. So today I will cover behavioral models, right? So since this is you all are student of tele-mental health counseling, so what is your understanding? Let me know that what is the basic understanding of psychology. I have already mentioned the psychological understanding in our first class. So just and brush up all these things. So you know that psychology is a scientific subject, right? So and the subject matters for psychology. There are three subject matters for psychology. Okay. So you remember what are the subject matters of psychology? Hello. Priyanka, Darsh, Urpita. You remember what are the subject matters of
Ma'am,
psychology?
I am just outside. Just connect with you after 10 minutes, ma'am. Just outside. আমি ট্রাফিকে আছি একটু। Yes, ma'am. আমি 10 minutes এর মধ্যে জয়েন করছি। মানে আমি ক্লাসটা শুনছি, আমি 10 minutes এর মধ্যে রিপ্লাই করছি, ম্যাম।
Okay. Okay. Urpita, Darsh.
Ma'am, hello. Hello.
Yes. Yes.
Ma'am, am I audible, ma'am? Ma'am,
Yes,
facing
yes,
a very bad network issues, raining outside. That's why.
Yes,
Hello.
I understand. Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, madam has presented the slides. Is it visible to all of you?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so please you follow the slides.
Achha, the slides are changing. Just
Yeah,
give me
slide is
yes.
changing.
Madam, slide are changing. Am I audible, madam?
Yes, slides are
Yes.
changing.
Yes,
Okay, madam.
yes,
Okay, madam.
Urpita, you are audible.
Okay, madam.
So my question was that you remember what are the subject matters of psychology? There are three subject matters, mainly three subject matters of psychology. Okay, okay. Just I'm telling you, the subject matters of psychology is three. A to C. You can remember as an acronym that A, B, C. Okay, A for affective, B for behavior, and C for cognition. A for affective, B for behavior, and C for cognition. Okay, so the effect of psychology is the actual mental process that make up mood, feeling, emotional state, right? And the B, that is behavior. Behavior includes the actual actions or responses of organisms. And behavior can include the way we act in any given situation. It also known as cognition. Okay, and last, the C is the cognition. Cognition is the mental process that results, and that includes thinking, knowing, remembering, judging, problem solving, etc. Right? So today and there is an interconnection between affect, behavior, and cognition. Okay. So today our topic is the behavioral model, right? So behavioral psychology is a study of external behavior. Behaviorism or the behavioristic approach stresses on the role of environmental stimuli in determining the way we act. Okay, so then what is behavior? Behavior is objective and observable, and whereas what goes on in one's mind can never really be known or measured, right? So, according to a behavioristic school, psychology was a study of behavior. On very first day, I mentioned that there is a way we see lot of changes to define psychology. Initially, it was told that psychology is the science of soul, but soul cannot be observed, and the existence of soul cannot be measured. So the definition was rejected. Then the definition came that psychology is the science of mind. Again, the mind cannot be observed because we are saying that psychology is the scientific subject, right? But if we cannot see the object, we cannot measure the object, so how can we say that it is a scientific thing? So that's why, that is the reason the second definition also be rejected. The third definition was that psychology is a study of consciousness. William James provided. Okay, but again, this is a very subjective matter, and it depends on the introspective process. So, because of introspection, in case of introspection, we cannot totally rely on the introspective process. Okay, because sometimes if we examine something, right, so if it totally depend on the introspective process, the subject will the subject one second. The subject may not report you the proper thing, okay, what they are feeling right now. Suppose you are asking me, ma'am, what are you feeling right now, what are your ambitions in future? So the while to answer you, I will reflect on myself. And what are the process for the reflection? The introspection. But with the help of introspection, maybe I may not reveal the whole things what I am thinking right now. Okay, like hypocrisy also be seen in that case, right? So that is why these are the things that study of mind, study of soul, study of consciousness were rejected. Lastly, J.B. Watson stated that the psychology is a study of behavior, right? So they believed that behavior could be understood, predicted, controlled without taking assistance of mental states. They believe that if psychology ever become a science, it must follow the example of physical sciences, so it can become objective. Okay, so behaviorism concerns behavior of whole organism in relation to environment. Okay, so the central tenet of behaviorism is that organism learns behavioral adaptation. Okay, so this is the basic idea of behaviorism, right? So while talking about behavioristic model, so we can see that there are many models. So firstly, that the Pavlov, you the Pavlov was he is actually is a physiologist. Okay, so the Pavlov is a Russian physiologist by profession. So by he stated a theory that is called classical conditioning, right? So classical conditioning here, while working with a dog, incidentally he came across a interesting learning phenomena. Okay, he was um, he was experimenting about the digestive system of the dog. Okay, so while working with dog, accidentally came across an interesting learning phenomena called as a classical conditioning. So so here the term that is conditioning. So what is the meaning of the conditioning? Conditioning is a relatively simple modification of behavior, right? Simple modification of behavior. Okay, so Pavlov began to study this phenomena, which is called conditioning. Okay, and since this type of conditioning emphasized was a classical one, quite different from the conditioning emphasized by other psychologists at the later stage. Okay, so coming to the what is the experiment it was. So first, just zooming the screen so it will be visible to you all. Okay. So here you can see the picture that I'm explaining the experiment. Anyone have any idea about the experiment? Classical conditioning experiment done by Pavlov?
Yes,
You know
ma'am.
the experiment? Yes.
Hello,
Hello. Yes.
madam. Do
I
you
can
want to
hear.
know about the Pavlov experiment on the dog?
Yes. Yes. What is the
Yeah, ma'am.
procedure? Yes.
Actually, the experiment was that in a particular time, the appetite of the dog was actually every day he used to give food for a particular time for a dog, and the thing is that at first, looking at the food, the dog, there is some means expression of appetite in the dog, and later it was found that at that particular time the appetite was there in dog, and the dog is means the tongue like that. I can't remember the proper symptom of that.
Exactly.
Is it true,
So
ma'am?
Pavlov, yes, yes. So I am explaining that the Pavlov designed an apparatus that could measure how much dogs mouth water in response to food, or mouth water means salivation. Okay, in response to food or other thing in its environment, right? So in the beginning, Pavlov kept a dog hungry for a few days and then tied him to an experimental table, which was fitted with a certain mechanical controlled device. Okay. So at the beginning of the experiment, Pavlov noted that no saliva was secreted while he rang the bell. Okay. Because bell was a neutral stimulus. Okay. Bell cannot produce salivation in any animal, right? So it is a neutral stimulus. But what can produce the salivation? Food. Okay, appearance of food or smell of food can produce salivation in animal, right? So then he trained dog by sounding the bell and shortly afterward presenting the food. Okay, so after the sound of the bell has been cleared with the food quite a few times. Maybe 10 days, 5 days, okay, quite a few times. Okay, Pavlov measured that amount of saliva that followed by the ringing the bell, but not presenting the food. Okay, so if we go with the sequence, initially when we rang the bell, when the Pavlov rang the bell, the dog will not salivate. Okay, but the appearance of food appearance of food allow the dog to secrete his saliva, right? So the food here is regarded as unconditioned stimulus, and the salivation in response to the food is a unconditioned response. Okay, appearance of the food is an unconditioned stimulus, and in response to the salivation of the dog is the unconditioned response, right? So when Pavlov presented the food and rang the bell, then appearance of the food may secrete salivation. Okay, so if we hear unconditioned stimulus and neutral stimulus pairing to each other, you have to keep it in mind that unconditional stimulus should go first, then the neutral stimulus come after. Okay, so unconditional stimulus, then the neutral stimulus, then the unconditional response occurs. After that, pairing this things for a yes. Hello.
Madam, why you are
Hello?
telling that it is an unconditional
Hello.
stimulus? Hello, ma'am.
Yes.
Madam,
Yes. Please,
why are you telling that it is an unconditional stimulus? Because the food is a condition. Why unconditional, madam?
No, no, because
I
it
don't
is a
understand
natural
this
thing.
point.
Yes, I'm saying that. I'm saying this because it is a natural thing. Unconditioned because I'm saying that condition is a process. Okay, here condition is a process through which I'm just repeating the slide. The condition is a process where we can modify the behavior. Okay, it is a simple modification of the behavior. It is a process where a simple modification of the behavior can be occurred. But here, the food is called as an unconditioned. Unconditioned because it is a natural thing. Because food here, unconditional stimulus also called as a natural stimulus, right? Food is a natural thing. It has potential to create a salivation, right? If you are hungry and if I give you some food that is very interesting to you and you are hungry that time, automatically you feel hungry and your hunger capacity will increase and your salivation process will increase. Food is called as an unconditioned because it is a natural thing and food will elicit the salivation process. So unconditional here, the unconditional stimulus produce unconditioned response. It is a very natural thing. It is a very natural thing. There is a no condition. There is a no condition, right? When the condition will occur if we modify the behavior. If we modify the behavior here is a salivation. Okay, you get
Okay,
my
madam.
point, or I will repeat in other
Okay,
way.
madam, got it. Thank you, madam.
Okay, so food is an unconditional stimulus and it will elicit the salivation, right? So after pairing the unconditional stimulus with a neutral stimulus, okay, repetition of this pairing, then the neutral stimulus become conditional stimulus. Okay, because the neutral stimulus has no potential to create salivation. Okay, no potential. It has no condition. It has no potential to create salivation in any animal or human being also, right? Because it is a neutral stimulus. So while we are pairing a neutral stimulus with a conditioned stimulus, after repeating the pair, the neutral stimulus becomes a conditioned stimulus. So the response also becomes conditioned response, right? So response also become conditioned response. Okay, I'm repeating again. Before the conditioning is a process to modify the behavior, right? So before the conditioning, food neutral stimulus is presented, but it will not create any response, desirable response like salivation. Okay, but the presentation of food will create a response that is salivation in dog. Okay, So during the condition process, neutral stimulus, when paired with a unconditioned stimulus, will create salivation in dog. That is called as an unconditioned response. So after after the when unconditioned stimulus paired with a neutral stimulus, after certain trial, after the conditioning process, neutral stimulus, that was ringing the sound of the bell, become conditioned stimulus, and the conditioned stimulus will elicit the response that was not previously elicited by sound of the bell, salivation. So the conditioned stimulus elicit the conditioned response. So ringing the bell, sound of the bell creates salivation in dog. So got my point?
Yes, ma'am.
Hello.
Thank you.
Hello. So your voice is breaking.
Yes,
My
ma'am.
voice is
Yes,
clear
ma'am.
to you all.
Yes, ma'am, properly. Thank you, ma'am.
Okay. Okay. So slide is not changing. Yeah. So I'm just telling the what is the classical conditioning process. Here is a flow chart. Okay. So firstly, what I'm telling that neutral stimulus produce no reaction. Then unconditional stimulus produce unconditioned response. Then unconditional stimulus and unconditional neutral stimulus, unconditional stimulus and neutral stimulus are paired together for many times. And after successive trial, neutral stimulus produce conditioned response. That is, neutral stimulus become a conditional stimulus and will produce conditioned response, right? So here is an example that a subject hear a song on radio, has no strong feeling for it initially. Okay, so maybe like a sound for the dog. I'm just creating the example again. So while ringing the bell will not create any response. Maybe you become alert after hearing the sound of the bell. You become alert, but it cannot produce any significant response that I am wanting from you, right? So neutral stimulus produce no reaction. Okay. So while conditioned stimulus, that I'm because Pavlov was examining the eating habits or digestive system of the office dog. So condition he was examining that how the dog is responding while producing a food to him. Okay, so if food is a conditioned stimulus, then the salivation is a conditioned response. Then neutral stimulus, that is bell, that Pavlov wants that if the execute if the any variable changes in dog, that is ringing the bell will produce salivation in dog. Here the Pavlov here Pavlov want to modify his behavior, that food will not create the salivation, the bell will create the salivation. Here is the modification process, right? Food will not create the salivation. Okay, here ringing the bell, sound of the bell will create the salivation. So during the conditioning process, neutral stimulus, that is initially bell, sound of the bell, will paired with an unconditioned stimulus. Okay, so after the process, the bell become a conditioned stimulus. Okay, and bell will produce the salivation, right? So in our daily life, the classical conditioning also has impact in our daily life also. Suppose in our daily life, we usually exposed to simple classical conditioning process. How? Suppose a father who, when he come home from office, always punishes, always scolds his child without caring to know the basic reason, the basic desire of his child, right? So child, here the conditioning process is that initially when the father coming to home, okay, and start punishing his child or scolding his child, right? So basic here, the child may produce fear to his father, okay, and develop anxiety reaction at times of his return to home, okay. Suppose father ringing the calling bell, okay. So the ringing the calling bell initially do not produce anxiety response in a child, right? Because the ringing the bell will make the child alert that somebody will come to his home. Okay, so ringing the bell will not create any anxiety response initially, but at the 8 p.m. in night, okay, when the father usually come to home from his office and ring the calling bell of his house, okay, then and after entering to the house, the father will start scolding his child without listening the child's desire, without caring the child's desire, right? Started scolding to his child. Okay, so after repeated that ringing the while father ringing the bell and entering the home and started scolding the child, scolding to his child, the scold will produce anxiety response because it is a very natural. If I shouting on you and punishing you, you will get fear. You will produce anxiety response. You have a fear response about me, okay? Because I'm shouting, I'm punishing you, okay? So, father punishment produce anxiety response in a child. It is a very natural thing. It is a here father's skill is a unconditional stimulus and fear response of the child is a unconditional. Father shouting is an unconditional stimuli and fear response of the child is an unconditional response. Okay. Then when the father ringing his calling bell of his house after and into the home, the ringing the calling bell become conditioned to the shouting of the father. Okay, then ringing the calling bell will produce anxiety later. Okay, first ringing the calling bell, ringing the bell of the house, then father entering to the house and shouting on the child, and the child got anxious. This is the process. This is the thing. Okay, ringing the bell, father shouting, and child gets anxious. This is the pairing. After repeated pairing for a certain period of time, ringing the bell will produce fear response in the child. Okay, father will not wait when father will come and shouting on me and I will got produce fear response. Child will not wait. Only the sound of the bell will create fear response in the child. Okay, because child become conditioned with the sound. Okay, that is 8 p.m. at the night, father ringing the bell, he will enter the home and shouting on me. Okay, this is already happened for several period of time. Okay, so the ringing the bell will become conditioned. So ringing the sound of the bell will create fear response. Initially, father's shouting create fear response in the child, but after repeated hearing of the bell, sound of the bell with father sounding, father shouting, the sound of the bell creates the fear response in the child. Okay. Understand any confusion? Yes. Yes, Priyanka.
Ma'am, once I was studying a book on NLP, Neuro Linguistic Programming. There I found this example, and they point this conditioning as anchor. Means as if an anchor holding situation after situation, and it making a chain. It's
Yes. So, any confusion? You understand the whole conditioning process?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
So, can you give me other example? You could just what I'm saying that father ringing the bell and father shouting the combined fear will produce anxiety response. After that, only the sound of the bell will produce fear response. So will you try any other example how any kind of response can be emerged through conditioned process?
Ma'am, may I try?
Yes, please.
Ma'am, my personal experience, when I listen the sound of a ambulance, I feel very fear and traumatized till now. Before 1 year, I have one accident and my mother lost due to that accident. And from that time, the siren and the horn of ambulance create a typical stimulus in my brain. And so I got very fear. Is it an example of that?
So can you tell me the whole process? Here I showing the flow chart. So using the flow chart, can you tell me how the sound of the ambulance? Your example. Can you tell me the whole process through this process?
Just like telling the means new brain stimulus and other things as you have mentioned in the flow chart, ma'am.
Yes.
Okay.
Hello?
I'm trying, ma'am. Actually, ambulance sirens is a neutral stimulus. It's unconditional one, cause it is normally don't cause any stimulus secretion in our brain. But here the thing is that the siren of the ambulance, when I listen till now, it causes the neutral stimulus produced no reaction in general. But in flowchart, you can say that these unconditional stimulus, normally unconditional responses is there, but here this becomes it reminds me, recalls me about the accident process. And so this particular type of means siren and ambulance sound, whatever, it is becoming conditional responses in my mind. And for that, these unconditional responses become conditionals, and these conditional responses create some stimulus secretion in my brain, which affects my behavior. And so I feel somehow means panic and traumatized condition. Is it okay?
Yes. Also, I also want to share my experience. Initially, the sound of the ambulance was not fear-producing to me. Okay, because it is known to me that sound of the ambulance means that some patient will is in the ambulance and he or she is taken to the hospital for any reason. So it is known to me. So initially, the ambulance sound of the ambulance uh, not creating any fear producing response to me initially, but similar thing happened to me when my mother was ill and she was taken to hospital through ambulance. So while in sitting in the ambulance, my mother's bad health creating a fear response to me, right? And so constantly the sound of the ambulance was associated with that situation. Okay, so initially the sound of the ambulance was neutral to me. It was not produce any fear kind of response to me. But when the sound of the ambulance was associated with my mother's health, okay, because my mother's health was fear producing to me. Initial, obviously, it is everybody will be anxious about if any family member will be taken to the hospital for any serious condition, serious health condition. Okay, so my mother's serious health condition was fear producing to me, right? Constantly sound of the ambulance plus my mother's serious health condition elicited the fear response, and constantly the pairing this later when I was walking on the road. Okay, and suddenly the sound of the ambulance coming from far away. Okay, so that things will create sometimes the fear producing physical changes in me, right? So while we already Priya ma'am said that anxiety, while you will get anxiety, while you will have anxiety feeling, you will have some physiological changes in your body, like heart pounding, trouble breathing, hand shaking, okay, sweating, palpitation will be seen to will be common for all anxiety patients, right? So when after the situation over, that I was sitting in the ambulance constantly, the sound of the ambulance constantly creating, and after my mother serious health condition was already, it was not there. But while I walking on the road and the sound of the ambulance was, I can hear the sound of the ambulance, it will create the same physiological response in me while I was sitting in the ambulance, right? So sound of the ambulance initially not creating any fear response, but when the sound of the ambulance conditioned with the serious health issue of my mother, that is very fear producing to me originally, unconditionally, then after the certain episode, after the certain time, the only the sound of the ambulance creating, evoking the anxiety response in me, was not evoking previously. So here the sound of the ambulance become conditioned stimulus, and my fear producing response become conditioned stimulus, right?
Yes, ma'am. Perfectly.
So here some principles of the classical conditioning word was where that acquisition, here the response happens gradually, first of all. So here response is gradual because we saying the neutral stimulus was not evoking the conditioned response. After the gradual trial, the condition neutral stimulus become conditioned stimulus, and it will create some conditioned response. So it happens gradually. Acquire the condition behavior happens gradually, right? Second is, that is generalization. It is also called as stimulus generalization, right? So if I'm taking the Pavlov's experiment, Pavlov's dog provide conditioned response, that is salivation, to the ringing, to the sound of the bell. Okay, so here, suppose the bell, there are a number of sounds we can create, but the suppose there are various type of bell. Okay, big bell, small bell, yeah, many type of bells. Some bells that is in school, there are some big type of bell. Okay, in our mandirs there are very, in our home mandirs there are very small type of bell. Okay, so there are different kind of the bell, and it has they have different kind of sounds in terms of intensity, right? So stimulus generalization here, the Pavlov's see that when when he conditioned his dog's response, that is salivation, towards the conditional stimulus, that is a sound of bell. Okay, he suppose he used a big bell. Okay, after sounding the big bells, okay, then the dog will salivate, right? Then the Pavlov used the like Santa Claus Walla's bell. Okay, so the bell that is used by Santa Claus. Okay, then the Pavlov used this type of bell. It was seen that dog also produce similar response to this different. Okay, so initially here dog learned the salivation response towards a big bell, okay, that is seen in our school, right? But when certain period of time, Pavlov used, just for example, Pavlov used the bell that is usually seen in Santa Claus hand, right? So use the sound of bell, right? But here Pavlov seen that dog originally produced same salivation process towards that different bell. Okay, so this is the generalization. So generalization is that here what has been trained, what has the dog already learned in the condition process has been generalized to other stimulus also. But the stimulus should be in a same nature. Okay, stimulus should be a same nature. So here next is stimulus discrimination. Stimulus discrimination is response is different to similar stimuli. Suppose here if I using hand clapping, right? Here like I am clapping the hand. Okay. So but dog already learned salivation process towards the bell, the sound of the bell. But if I am clapping hand, dog will not salivate because dog already trained to salivate towards the sound of the bell, right? He will not salivate towards the sound of the clapping hand, already banging on the table. This kind of sound will not produce the same response, right? So it is the stimulus discrimination. Dog can discriminate the stimulus, the nature of the stimulus, right? Next is extinction. Extinction is the gradual disappearance conditioned response. Okay. It was noted by Pavlov that if the conditioned stimulus presented alone a number of times without food, okay, then the magnitude of the conditioned response, that is salivation, begin to decrease. Okay, so I am creating the sound of the bell, but will not produce the sound, will not giving the food to the dog. After certain period of time, dog will not secrete salivation after hearing the sound of the bell, right? So it is a gradual disappearance of the conditioned response. Okay, so conditioned stimuli, that is sound of the bell, will not produce conditioned response if we will not giving the food to the dog. Okay, if we will not giving the actual stimulus, right? Next is spontaneous recovery. Spontaneous recovery is what is spontaneous recovery? It is the reappearance of the conditioned response to conditioned stimuli. In extinction, I am saying that the conditioned response will not be produced if the food will not be provided to the dog after ringing the bell. Okay, but after certain period of time, if the bell is ringing and the dog is giving the food, after certain trial, dog again produce the conditioned response to the bell, to the sound of the bell. Okay, this is the spontaneous recovery, right? So here is a basic difference between the condition between the extinction and the forgetting. Okay, so what will be the difference? Extinction and forgetting are not same. Forgetting occurs over time when there is no explicit procedure involved, right? But extinction occur if because there is a procedure, explicit procedure involved, right? Okay, forgetting occurs gradually if we will not using the materials that we learned already. Okay, if we will not using the materials that we already learned, acquired by our acquired already, but we are not using, like we already while in class 5 we taught some poem. Okay, we learned some poem, but at this age we cannot recollect the poems. We cannot recollect the poems line by line because we are not practicing this. We are not practicing the learned material over the time. So gradually we forgot the material, but no explicit mechanical procedures are involved in that case. But in case of extinction, there is a procedure involved, that ringing the bell and not giving the food, then salivation, the tendency of salivation will decrease, will disappear. So here is a process involved, right? So these are the principles, that is stimulus generalization, stimulus discrimination. Stimulus generalization is same, stimulus generalization, stimulus discrimination, extinction, and spontaneous recovery. These are the main four principles of classical conditioning was provided by Pavlov. Okay.
Ma'am,
Yes, yes.
please explain the discrimination once again, ma'am.
Okay, discrimination. Okay. So, here, dog learned that producing learned conditioned response towards conditioned stimuli. Here, conditioned stimuli is the sound of the bell, right? And conditioned response is salivation, right? So here, dog learned that ringing sound of the bell. Well, my master will ringing the bell. I will produce salivation. As a dog, I will produce salivation, right? So I learned that ringing the bell will giving food. Okay, so I become alert. So without seeing the food, without the appearance of the food, I started salivation, right? So here the stimulus originally used the sound of the bell, but if after certain trial, if so Pavlov producing sound through hand clapping, banging on the table, okay, any kind of sound that different from the sound of the bell, okay, then dog will not produce salivation. Okay, any kind of sound that is any kind of stimulus that is different from the original conditioned stimulus, then conditioned response will not be occurred. Okay, understand, Priyanka?
Yes, thank you, ma'am. Ma'am, means that similar stimuli, but not the same bell, the different kind of bell or hand clapping or any other sound, not the same bell.
Different kind of bell may produce response. That is generalization. Okay, but a big bell, a small bell, or a bell that is used by Santa Claus will produce conditioned response because it is the sound of the bell, right? But sound of hand clapping, sound of gunshot, sound of banging on the table, okay, this will not produce because these sounds are originally different from bell. Okay.
Okay, ma'am. Thank you.
So everybody understand my point?
Yes, ma'am. Yes.
Darsh, Abhishek, are you there?
Yes.
Hello,
Yes, ma'am.
I'm audible. Hello.
Yes, ma'am, you're audible.
Hello.
Yes, ma'am, you're audible. We can hear you.
Hello. 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 Hello.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes. Okay. Thank you. Because the weather is changing here suddenly. Maybe I have facing some network issue. So I'm not hearing you all. Okay. If you are not able to hear me, then please write on chat box because I'm not able to hear you all. If you have any question and doubt, please write it down. Okay. because the today's topic is very difficult, right? Okay. Okay. Next is after Pavlov, then another model is Watson. Watson. Okay. So according to Watson, psychology being the science that I've already told that being the science of behavior must deal with the action. Okay. So Watson explained four types of behavior. First of all, that is explicit behavior that can be observed by others. That is also called as overt behavior. Next is covert behavior. Covert behavior that cannot be observed by others. Okay, overt behavior is observed by others, and covert behavior is the inner part that cannot be observed by others. That what I am feeling right now. Okay, these are not observed by others, right? So there are four types of behavior: explicit behavior, such as I'm talking, I'm writing, I'm playing, that can be observed by you. But my heart rate is increasing. Okay, so it is inner side that cannot be observed by you. It can be measured by through machine. It can be measured through machine, right? Next is explicit unlearned behavior. So behavior which comes naturally and is visible, such as grasping, blinking, and sneezing. Okay, these are the reflex action. Okay, grasping, well, sneezing, blinking, swallowing. These are the reflex action that is already, that is naturally. We are learned this naturally. Okay. Next is implicit unlearned behavior. So that is also learned naturally. That is glandular secretion, circulatory changes. These are all learned naturally. Okay. So according to Watson, Watson believed that all kind of learning can come through conditioning process. Okay. So for the conditioning process, he was not regarding the importance of hereditary importance. Okay, hereditary importance is he's not giving the importance to the process of hereditary inherent process. Okay, he said that everything is learned through stimulus response conditioning. So where the stimulus is coming from our environment, and the response towards the stimulus is our reaction. So stimulus is coming up. So stimulus is coming, and I am responding towards the stimulus. The chain will create a learning process. Okay, suppose, for example, tiger is coming to me. Okay, so the tiger is coming to me, and my response is I will get very anxious. It will produce fear response to me. Okay, it will produce fear response to me. My heart rate will increases, and I started to running from the situation. Okay, so when the tiger is approaching to me, coming to me, and I am starting sweating, and my heart rate will increasing. Okay, my other fear responses are increasing, and I'm started running from the situation. Okay, so stimulus is the visibility of the appearance of the tiger, the chasing the tiger towards me. This is the stimulus, and my response is running from the situation. So this stimulus and response bond will create a learning process, right? So here insight is not explained by the Watson. You can say that this is our insight response, that tiger chasing to me, that means we will it will attack, and I will be die. Okay, it is a very natural thing. So it is our insight, but Watson did not regard the concept of insight. He said that only stimulus response coordination will create the learning process. Okay. So behavior only be understood by the conditioning process between stimulus and response, right? Next. Okay. So according to Watson, he said that studying this type of behavior that I mentioned, there are 4 types of behavior. First is observation. Through observation, the behavior can be measured. Okay. Then the process that Pavlov mentioned, the conditioning process through which the behavior can be measured, manipulated. Okay. Next is testing. Testing that it refers to the simple measurement, and the verbal report. Okay, verbal report that what I am behaving, so I'm reporting to you. I'm getting angry, I'm feeling very anxious. Why I'm getting angry, why I'm feeling very anxious, I'm reporting to. These are the condition, these are the situation, creating the anxiety provoking response, the fear producing response in me. So I'm giving the verbal report to you. Okay, on the basis of verbal report, on the basis of observation and the process, the classical conditioning process, the behavior can be measured. Okay, so Watson strictly maintaining the process, the classical conditioning that already mentioned by Pavlov. Okay, so there are basic 4 postulate of the behaviorism. So I'm forgot to mention that J.B. Watson regarded as a father of behaviorism. Okay, behavioristic school, right? So behaviorism believed that behaviorism believed in response element, that behaviorism pointed out that a scientific method can observe, and their responses scientifically, and introspection was not needed. I already mentioned that introspection, if I solely depend on the introspection process to evaluating the behavior of others, I will not get proper explanation of that behavior. I need to observe. I need to keep my observation to explain other person's behavior. So I cannot solely depend on the introspection process, because introspection will not give me the solid information, because hypocrisy will emerge, right? So here the observation process is mainly pointed as a scientific method to study the behavior, right? Behaviorists postulate that behavior is functional, glandular secretion, and muscular movement only, right? Here our thinking, what I am feeling, what I am thinking is not important. Okay, here the glandular secretion and muscular movement is important for explaining a behavior. Next is behaviorism also postulated that every response has stimulus. Every response has stimulus. They believe that stimulus-response relationship is actually as a cause and effect relationship. What is the cause? Stimulus is the cause and effect is the actual response, right? So I'm shouting on you, it is a cause, it is a stimulus to you, and you are getting afraid, you are feeling anxious to do my class, it is your response, right? So it is the effect of my stimulus that I'm providing to you, right? So behavior is actually can be explained as a cause and effect relation. Okay, so here consciousness cannot be regarded scientific method. Consciousness means my decision making, my judgment, my feeling is not regarded here, scientifically regarded, noted here, right? So these are the basic 4 postulates. So you have to read this 4 postulates. It will be asked in your Viva exam also, right? These are the basic 4 tenets and 4 postulates for behaviorism. Guys, I'm again mentioning that behavior is not regarding the inherent process, the genetic process, okay, the introspective process, my emotional process, these are not regarded. Okay, they are only regarding that while I'm receiving the stimulus and what my response towards the stimulus. The bond between the stimulus and response is the actual foundation of behavior. Okay. Next, the very important experience. Hello.
Yes, ma'am. Then second point means first one is observation. Number 2, please explain if possible, ma'am. Number 2, the proposed by Pavlov.
Number 2. Oh.
Yes, ma'am.
Oh, the proposed. Okay, the proposed by Pavlov. Proposed by Pavlov means the classical conditioning process that I already discussed. Okay, so through classical conditioning process, I can only study the behavior. So why the behavior is changing? That already me and Orpita discussing that the sound of the ambulance creating the fear-producing response. Why the sound of the ambulance creating the fear-producing response? So here I can study if I am considering the classical conditioning process, that initially the ambulance, the sound of the ambulance was neutral to me, but when the sound of the ambulance was associated with my serious health condition of my mother, that is very fear producing to me. After the certain trial, the sound of the ambulance become a fear producing for a subject. So why a behavior is changing, why the behavior emerged, can be explained by the classical conditioning process that is originally proposed by Pavlov. Understand?
Okay, okay, ma'am. Okay, ma'am. Thank you.
Okay. I know this is a very difficult model. Since if you have any doubt, you can ask me anytime, right? Okay. Next is very important experiment, that is Little Albert experiment. Little Albert experiment, it was done by Pavlov and his assistant, right, in Hopkins University. Okay. So here also the one second. Here also seeing the classical conditioning process was used in this Little Albert experiment. Okay. Just a moment. Okay. So here in case of in this Little Albert experiment, it is a very well-known experiment, and it showing the empirical evidence of classical conditioning process. In case of in this process, it is a very famous and also controversial experiment, right? So here Watson put his theory on conditioning to this test. The experiment it involves a 11-month-old boy whose name is old boy, who was allowed to play with the various animals such as rats, rabbit, and that he was not initially afraid of. Okay, so the appearance of rat and rabbit will not create any fear-producing response in Albert, right? But with repeated exposure, Watson and his assistant begin fearing the animal contact with a loud sound. Okay, loud sound was naturally creating a fear. Sudden sound like sudden gunshot will create a fear producing response in us, right? So after combining the here the sound of the gunshot is a condition, it's the unconditioned stimulus, and the fear towards the gunshot is an unconditioned response, right? You can see in the flow chart, before the conditioning, neutral stimulus, it will not use any fear kind of response. So rabbit is a neutral stimulus and no response, no fear is an it will not create any response, so it is a neutral stimulus. But while sound of any loud sound like gunshot will produce a fear in Albert, right? So here gunshot is a unconditioned stimulus and fear is a unconditioned response. I'm repeating, sound of a gunshot is a unconditioned stimulus and fear is unconditioned response, right? Now coming to the conditioning process. So in the conditioning process, visibility of the rat, okay, plus after that, in a brief period of time, within a fraction of time, I am producing a sound of gun, okay, and gunshot, okay. So neutral stimulus, that is entering into the room, okay, that is not creating fear initially, So it was a neutral stimulus. So rat is entering to the room. After that, the sound of a gunshot produced by the Watson and his assistants, right? So pairing these two things, neutral stimulus and unconditional stimulus. Neutral stimulus and unconditional stimulus produce the natural reflex, the natural response, that is fear. Actually, here, while during the in the flow chart, you can see that the during the conditioning process, neutral stimulus plus the unconditional stimulus. Here, unconditional stimulus actually producing the fear stimulus. Here, unconditional stimulus actually producing the fear stimulus. But before the visibility of the neutral stimulus, during the conditioning process and the repeated trial of the neutral stimulus plus unconditional stimulus produce fear response in Albert. So after the whole conditioning process, neutral stimulus, that is had produce fear response. Initially rat was not producing fear response in Albert, but after the conditioning process, rat will produce fear response, right? It is a conditioned process. So here Watson, using the whole classical conditioning process that was explained by Pavlov. So here we can learn that any kind of fear response, any kind of attitude, any kind of idea can be learned through classical conditioning process if I am regarding the behavioristic approach. Okay, suppose I am giving another example. Suppose a particular uncle, okay, suppose Ram uncle. Okay, Ram uncle was a very neutral stimulus to me. So when the Ram uncle coming to my house, when he visiting our house will not produce any kind of response. Okay, so he was very neutral stimulus to me, right? So when Ram uncle visits my home, it will create no response. He is very neutral to me. It will create no response. So here, as an experimenter, you want to produce very irritating response towards Ram uncle. As an experiment, you want very irritating response towards Ram uncle. You are creating that. So if you using the classical conditioning process, right? So what you have to find out what kind of stimulus will create irritating response naturally. Okay, what kind of response, what kind of stimulus originally naturally creating irritating response in me. Okay, you find that when my mother scolding me, I will get very irritated. I'm getting very irritated when my mother scolding to me. Okay, so when my mother scolding to me, it is an unconditional stimulus, and I am getting irritated is the unconditional response. Okay, so you want this kind of irritation will be when Ram uncle will visit my home. Okay, initially Ram uncle when visits my home, I will not show any kind of irritation or a response. Okay, I am giving very neutral response. Okay, so when Ram uncle visits, my mother started scolding me. When Ram uncle visits my home, my mother started scolding me. And when my mother is scolding me, I am getting irritated. I am getting very irritated. This is my natural reflex. So during the conditioning process, when the pair is creating for simultaneously for number of trial for a certain period of that Ram uncle visits my home, my mother started scolding me, and I am getting irritated. After a certain period of time, after conditioning process, when Ram uncle visits my home, I will show my irritation that was not originally done. Okay, so here my attitude towards my Ram uncle becomes changed through classical conditioning process. So here any logical behavior can be explained by classical conditioning process. Understood? Hello?
Yes, ma'am. Very interesting class today because, as I said before you, ma'am, I was reading a book on NLP, and the theory of this NLP is totally connected with this study. What you are teaching today, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am.
Okay. Okay. Thank you. Okay. So I'm just requesting to you all, just start any kind of example that you can explain through classical conditioning process. After finishing my lecture, I will ask each one of you to explain any kind of behavior that can be developed through classical conditioning process. Any kind of attitude, any kind of emotion, any kind of negative behavior, antisocial behavior, any. Just to start thinking. Okay, after my lecture, I will ask each of you. Okay, then I can understand that everybody, my lecture is already understand by you all, whether or not. Okay. So after so this little Albert experiment very controversial, because everybody criticizing Watson, that he creating some fear producing response in a 11-month-old child. Okay, so later Watson and his assistant do a post experiment. Okay, so in case shortly after the experiment it was performed, Watson and his assistant had planned to attempt a desensitization process. So how the fear response towards the towards the rabbit or rat can be reduced through the process of desensitization. So here Watson have to found what kind of stimulus can produce very soothing, very happy, cheerful response in Albert. Watson have to find out what kind of response are there that may develop very happy, cheerful kind of response in Albert. So Watson found out that if his mother if his mother take the Albert and play with Albert, or if Albert's mother play with him, then Albert becomes very happy. Okay, so playing a mother's presence creates happiness in Albert. Okay, so here presence of mother is an unconditioned response, and happiness is an unconditioned. Presence of mother is an unconditioned stimulus, and happiness is an unconditioned response, right? Because presence of mother creates happiness in Albert, right? Okay. Next, here this kind of unconditioned response and the unconditioned stimulus and unconditioned response will use for conditioning process. Here, the appearance of the presence of mother plus appearance of rabbit that create fear producing response after conditioning process initially. So presence of mother plus presence of rabbit. Okay, so these are the pairing. The first, initially a rabbit enter to the room. Okay, then mother enter the room, and mother's presence will create happiness in the Albert. So presence of the rabbit in plus presence of the mother. After certain trial, the presence of rabbit will create happiness in Albert. So this is the desensitization process. Okay, so here to reducing the fear response towards the rabbit, Watson also used the process of classical conditioning process for desensitizing. Okay, for comforting the child. Okay, okay. So understand the post experiment.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so the classical conditioning procedure already covered. Okay, any question from classical conditioning procedure? Darsh, Orpita, Abhishek, Priyanka, any question? Any explanation, further explanation? Okay, Darsh said no, ma'am. Orpita, Abhishek, are you there?
No, ma'am, no question.
Okay. Abhishek, are you there? Oh, participants. Okay, Abhishek is not there. Okay. Okay, so I'm now coming to the operant conditioning process. Classical conditioning over. Now coming to operant conditioning process. So it is also very interesting. Okay. Oh, my slide is not changing. Wait. Next is operant conditioning by Skinner. Okay, so American psychologist develops the B.A. Skinner developed operant conditioning process. Skinner believed that an animal or an human could be trained to perform virtually any act that the type of reinforcement that followed the behavior. Here Skinner actually mentioned that the reward principle, that is reward or reinforcement principle, that is very important. Okay, to develop any kind of desirable response, any kind of desirable behavior can be developed by through providing reinforcement or reward. Skinner believed that any kind of desirable behavior, can be developed by providing reinforcement or reward. Okay, so but later Skinner preferred the term reinforcement instead of reward because he made difference between two terms. Okay, because reward according to Skinner is a very subjective interpretation. Okay, very subjective interpretation. Like suppose I just want that my student will attend my class regularly. Okay, so to increase the presence of my student like in regular basis, I should provide a reward to them. So I'm giving a chocolate to all of you, but suppose Priyanka has very good interpreting the chocolate as a very good thing, but Darsh is not interpreting the chocolate as a very good thing, but because she is not liking to eat the chocolate, so chocolate is not very rewarding to Darsh. Okay, so it is a reward is very subjective thing. So to produce so to creating the reinforcement process, we need to learn what are the rewards are there that will have very positive subjective interpretation. For me, chocolate is not very good reward for me. If you give me a pen, it will be very rewarding for me, and it will be very encouraging for me. But chocolate will not be very encouraging. But for others, chocolate is very encouraging for her or him. But providing pen is not very encouraging for him or her. So reward is a very subjective interpretation. So instead of using the term reward, Skinner preferred to use the term reinforcement, because for reinforcement process, as an experimenter, you have to find out what are the things can be used as a reinforcement. So here the important thing is that reinforcement process is very important thing to increase the desirable behavior within a subject. So you have to learn that reinforcement is only mechanism. There is two things Skinner mentioned, that reward and punishment. Okay, punishment is the thing that will decrease the behavior. Reinforcement is the procedure that will increase the behavior. Reinforcement will not decrease the behavior. You have to understand the basic difference. It will be asked in also, what is the difference between reinforcement and punishment, whether the reinforcement decrease the behavior or not. So your answer that reinforcement always increase the behavior, always increase the desirable behavior, but punishment will decrease the undesirable behavior. Okay, undesirable behavior, that the behavior that is undesirable to the experiment, punishment process will decrease the undesirable behavior, right? So reinforcement what is reinforcement? It is the act of strengthening a response by adding a reward, thus increase the likelihood that response will be repeated. The concept of reinforcement is identically to the presentation of reward. Here, two types of reinforcement are there. First is positive, next is negative. So positive, that it's for example, suppose if your student, okay, if your student is not doing the homework regularly, okay, so as an experimenter, as a teacher, you want that you should develop desirable behavior, that is doing homework regularly. It is a desirable behavior for every student and parents that the child should do his homework regularly, right? It is a desirable behavior, but the child is not. If you are visiting a ADHD child, like attention deficit hyperactive child, the child is not doing the things, the child is not doing these or her things regularly. Okay, so you want, as a counselor, you want that the child should do the things regularly. So here you can use the positive reinforcement as a therapeutic process, as a counseling process. That that is you can use any reward, that if you can ask the child that if you are behaving this desirable behavior regularly, you will be rewarded by certain, by providing certain thing. Okay, you can ask your child, but you cannot use something expensive things. You can use food. Okay, like you can see say your child that if you are doing your homework regularly, if you are submitting your homework regularly to your teacher, then your mother will give you a chocolate biscuit to you. Okay, so if the child behaving the desirable behavior, after that, after behaving that, after perform the desirable behavior, his or her mother should give the reward instantly. Okay, after positive reinforcement, when the positive reinforcement can occur, if the child, if your subject if your subject is doing the desirable behavior, after performing the desirable behavior, then you will reward your subject. Okay, not before before performing the behavior. Okay, then reinforcement will not work. The positive reinforcement process will not work. Okay, you have to reward your subject after committing the behavior, after committing the desirable behavior. Then, so why it is called positive reinforcement? Because it serves to increase and strengthening the particular behavior. Getting the reward after performing the desirable behavior, then it will act as a positive reinforcement. Then I will learn that if I behaved in a positive way, if I behaved in a desirable way, I will be rewarded. Then the desirable behavior will be reinforced. Right? Next is negative reinforcement. Negative reinforcement, that it is any stimulus, the removal of which increase the likelihood particular behavior. Suppose I'm taking example that suppose that is very interesting to me. So we girls, we human being, usually now the summer, we facing the tan problem, okay, skin tanning problem, right? So this is very this is not this kind of negative. This is a very this is a kind of a stimulus that is that we all do not want. Okay, we do not want my skin got tanned, right? So we can remove this kind of stimulus. If we perform any desirable behavior, like using sunscreen. Using sunscreen can avoid the tanning stimulus. Okay, using the sunscreen is a behavior. Okay, using the sunscreen is a desirable behavior. If the using the sunscreen after performing the desirable behavior can remove the negative response, the negative stimulus. Okay, can remove the negative stimulus that is very irritating for me. That is very that I do not want initially, right? So using the sunscreen, that is a desirable behavior, can remove the skin tanning problem stimulus. If we see that using the sunscreen can remove this, then the behavior can be reinforced because it can remove the negative stimulus. It can remove the negative stimulus, right? So that particular stimulus becomes increased. Okay, so positive response. What is positive response? After performing the undesirable behavior, after performing the desirable behavior, so I will get a reward, and the desirable behavior become reinforced, and the occurrence of the desirable behavior will be increased. Right. In case of negative response, we can remove the certain stimulus after performing a particular behavior. If the particular behavior can remove the particular stimulus, then the occurrence of performing the particular behavior can be reinforced, right? And punishment, that I said that if after performing certain kind of behavior, certain kind of undesirable behavior, if I got punished, if I face any adverse stimulus, then the frequency of the particular behavior, particular undesirable behavior will be decreased. Like suppose you can observing that two childs are fighting for a toy. Okay, for a particular toy, two childs are fighting. So as a teacher, as a counselor, as a not a counselor, as a teacher, as a parent, they will, what they are doing, they scolding the child. They are scolding the children because they are fighting for a particular toy. They are shouting, they are creating noise, they are disturbing others. Okay, so for a particular toy. So as a teacher, as a parent, started shouting, started beating the children, right? But instead of doing that, what you can do, you can remove the toys. Okay, you can remove the toy, can decrease the fighting tendency between them, right? Because they are fighting because of the toy, they want the toys. So if you remove the toy, it will decrease the fighting tendency that is very desirable to you, right? This is a punishment. Okay, so these two concepts actually described by Skinner. He actually described that any kind of behavior can be explained. Any kind of behavior can be developed through reinforcement process, or any kind of behavior can be changed or modified through reinforcement process, and any kind of undesirable behavior can be decreased through punishment process, right? Okay. So before, so here you can see the flow chart, that positive reinforcement, presence of pleasant stimulus, and negative reinforcement, absence of unpleasant stimulus. That I'm saying that skin tanning, that is unpleasant stimulus to us. So absence of the unpleasant stimulus increase the desirable behavior, and punishment is presence of unpleasant stimulus, that is removal of the toy. Okay, this is the unpleasant stimulus for me, that I have no toy to play. So unpleasant stimulus can decrease the undesirable behavior. Okay, so what are the consequences of positive response and negative response? So positive response, if you behave in a certain way and you get a positive result, then your positive behavior will increase. Okay, and in case of negative reinforcement, if performing a behavior, you can remove something very unpleasant to you, then the performance of that particular behavior will be increased. So through positive and reinforcement, a desirable behavior always increasing. But in case of punishment, the desirable behavior are decreasing. Okay. So you have to identify what are the basic difference between negative reinforcement and punishment. So negative, if it is called negative reinforcement, but I already mentioned that reinforcement always increase the desirable behavior. Okay, but punishment always decrease the undesirable behavior. Like, right, that here the example is that something unpleasant is removed. As a result, you are more likely to do it again. Okay, after using sunscreen, you can remove the skin tan problem. Okay, so the using the sunscreen behavior is increasing. You are doing it again. But in case of punishment, if a consequence happens that you don't like and you are less likely to do it again, the punishment can add something or take something away, right? That removal of the toys can decrease the fighting tendency between them, right? So this is the basic difference. So punishment increasing behavior and punishment decreasing behavior, reinforcement increasing behavior. Okay, so here is an experiment that was performed by Skinner to explain the operant conditioning process. Okay, just a moment. So here is the operant conditioning process. So Skinner developed a apparatus that is called Skinner box. Okay, in the Skinner box, where rat was trained to operate upon its environment. Okay, so in operant conditioning process, it is the procedure by which a change in the consequence of response will affect the rate at which the response occurs. Okay, here you can see the see a flow chart, right? So I'm saying the whole procedure firstly. Here in when the rat is put into the Skinner box, okay, so the rat was moving into the Skinner into the box randomly, okay, and there was a bar, there was an electric bar. If I am pressing the bar, a food plate is coming from opposite side. Okay, a food plate is coming from opposite side, right? You can see it in the picture also, right? Okay, so the movement of the rat was here. The movement of the rat was electrically recorded. So as the rat placed the bar accidentally without knowing its significance, okay, some amount of food came out. Okay, and this worked as a reinforcement. This worked as a reinforcement. We motivate the rat to learn how to place the bar. Okay, so it was seen as a little period of, and then the rat learned to praise the bar correctly. So if you follow the flow chart, S1 is unknown, that pressing the bar. Okay, the bar, so visibility of the bar is unknown. Bar actually the stimulus, right? So it was unknown to the rat. If I press the bar, then I will get certain amount of food, right? So S1 is a represent of the stimulus condition. The first prompted that the rat to press the bar. Okay, so S1 is the bar, visibility of the bar. Then when the rat accidentally press the bar, okay, it results in the availability of the food. So that secondly, the initial stimulus become reinforced stimulus. Okay, initial stimulus become reinforced stimulus. So because it produces some food to me. Okay, it produces some food to me. So so the rat constantly pressing the bar to get the food. Okay, so initially visibility of the bar, presence of the bar was unknown to him, unknown to the rat. When he accidentally pressed the bar, it is a response. Then he get another stimulus, that is food. Okay, and the presence of the food increase the tendency to press the bar. Okay, so here the food is actually a positive reinforcement to the rat. Okay, understand the whole experiment. Hello, should I repeat or you understand?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you. Okay, next is, so I'm telling the reinforcement process. So there is a planning of the schedule of reinforcement process. So you can provide the reward continuous manner, or after a certain period of time, you can provide the stimulus in a variable manner or in an interval process. Okay, because if you are providing the stimulus continuous manner, it will create a habituate tendency. Okay, sometimes you may called as a that it is a kind of bribe the child, right? So if the child is performing his homework, then I'm giving the chocolate, that means I'm bribing the child, right? So sometimes initially you should maintain the reinforcement process in a continuous manner. After that, you can use the reinforcement process as a variable manner. Okay, so it is also very important for your exam also, and the whole therapeutic process also. That is, first is the continuous reinforcement process. Here continuous reinforcement process is that the time that for example, that a student may be rewarded for every answer to fourth by his teacher. Okay, so if you are giving me right answer, I'm giving you, I'm praising you. So if I'm praising you, it is very rewarding for you, right? So you are getting motivated to constantly giving positive response, correct response. So if I'm constantly praising you, right, very good, right, very good, after if you giving correct answer, each correct answer, then giving the correct answer repeatedly will be increasing. Okay, so yeah, continuous process is that performing desirable behavior each time I will giving the desirable reward. In case of praise, in case of providing any food material in a continuous manner, right? Next is fixed interval reinforcement. So in this reinforcement, the subject is rewarded for a response made only after a set interval of time. Example, every 3 minutes or every 5 minutes. Okay, every 3 minutes or every 5 minutes. So how many times he has given correct response during this fixed interval of time doesn't matter. Okay, but it is only at the expiry of the fixed interval that he is presented with some reinforcement, right? So if within a 5 minutes, if you are giving some correct answer, I will give you some reward. So that doesn't matter how many correct answer you are giving, right? So it is a fixed interval ratio. Next is fixed interval reinforcement schedule, right? Next is fixed ratio interval. Okay, fixed ratio interval. What is fixed ratio interval? Fixed ratio. Sorry. Okay. Sorry. Again, in my slides got stuck. Next is fixed ratio reinforcement schedule. So here it is in the schedule, the reinforcement is given after a fixed number of response. In case of number 2, I'm saying that every 5 minutes I will give you reward if you give correct answer. Here number is not matter. What how many times you are giving correct response. Okay, if you are giving correct response within 3 minutes or 5 minutes, I will give you reward for fixed interval reinforcement. But for fixed ratio reinforcement, if you give 5 correct answers, then I will give you reward. Okay, here the time doesn't matter. Here the number of number of correct responses matter. For number 2, the number of correct response doesn't matter. The time is matter. Within a time frame, you are giving correct response for fixed interval ratio reinforcement. But for fixed ratio reinforcement, here number of correct responses matter, right? Next is variable reinforcement schedule. So when the reinforcement is given at varying interval of time or after a varying number of response, it is called as a variable reinforcement schedule. Like you are using fixed interval reinforcement and fixed ratio reinforcement in a combined manner, right? So you are saying your subject within a 6 minutes, you have to give 10 correct response. If you give 10 correct response within a 6 minutes, I will give you reward. Okay, so this is the variable reinforcement schedule. So in this manner, you can plan your schedule of reinforcement, right? Understood? Understand? Okay, so I'm going next. So next is
yes, ma'am.
okay. Next is shaping new behaviors. So shaping new behaviors is a very important thing. Here you can shape, you can develop new behavior or existing desirable behavior, increase existing desirable behavior, or develop new behavior by the process of shaping. So shaping is a process that increasingly visible to the desirable. Suppose that a child things from a particular shop, right? You as a counselor, you want so you want to develop desirable behavior in a child, in your subject, right? So you can divide the final behavior into a successive step. Like first step is that you can ask the child's parents that the child mother should take the child to a shop and ask the child to ask the shopkeeper to give something, some chocolate, okay, that he wants to buy, right? So first step is that to take the child to a shop. This is the first step. If the child go to the shop with his mother and ask the shopkeeper to give me a chocolate, uncle, and if the child can do the things, the mother should reward the child, should praise the child that very good beta, you are doing very good job. Okay, so after performing the desirable behavior, first step of desirable behavior, mother should reward the child. Okay, then next step, again the mother take the child to the shop and ask the child, you should ask the shopkeeper for a thing and give this money to the shopkeeper. If the child perform these things systematically, then his or her mother should praise the child that again you do the very good, you do good thing. Okay, you should here performing each successive step, the child should be praised or should be rewarded. So I am dividing the final behavior to buy things from a shop into a successive step. Okay, this is the shaping, right? This is the shaping. After performing each step, the child should be rewarded, should be praised, because reward can reinforce the occurrence of the desirable behavior, right? In this way, you can train your child. While you are seeing a child as a counselor, while you are seeing a child, you can train your child through this process of shaping using the operant conditioning principle, right? Next is that what are the different applications of operant conditioning? So you already understand the positive reinforcement, how you can use the positive reinforcement process in your therapeutic counseling process, how you can use the negative reinforcement process in your therapeutic process. Okay, so here some good examples are that for negative reinforcement, that a child that throws a tantrum because he does not want to eat vegetable. Okay, if then here that he has his or her vegetable taken away. For good example, like suppose suppose here the child is throwing tantrum, right? So I'm not eating this vegetable, I'm not eating this vegetable, right? So what if I'm removing that something I'm remove if I'm telling the child that can avoid disease, avoid serious disease. If I'm educating the child, constantly educating the child, if you eat these things, you can avoid serious disease. Okay, if you can avoid fever, you can avoid influenza kind of disease. So okay, so this kind of education can reinforce the child. Punishment, you already know the punishment. Here other examples can be that suppose a child is very getting very restless during the, and he is disturbing the other students, right? So you as a teacher asking the child that don't please sit quietly, please don't disturb others, but child is not listening to you. So as a punishment, what can you do? That what can you do? You can ask the child, please go out of the class and sit there. Okay, because the classroom is very stimulating the child. So the stimulating, if the stimulating condition can be removed from the child, then the child tendency to getting this can be removed, can be reduced. So what, it will take time. Okay, it will take time. It cannot happen one day, right? Therapy cannot happen in a day. Okay, so punishment you can apply for your counseling process. Next is flooding. Flooding involves exposing the people to fear evoking object intensely and rapidly. Forcing someone with a fear of snake to hold one or for 10 minutes would be an example of flooding. Another example can be that suppose you feel very anxious, enter into a staff room where a teacher is sitting, who is you are very a teacher who is whom you are getting affected by, so he is sitting in the staff room, right? So as a counselor you can say that student, please enter the staff room and stand in the staff 10 minutes and see what happens. Because entering the staff room is very fear producing to a student, because he or she feels that if I enter to the classroom, I will be scolded by the teacher, by the particular teacher. Because he is assuming, he is apprehending the situation in a very easy manner, right? So flooding is that exposing the subject very intensely exposing the subject to the particular stimulus. This is the flooding. But this is the flooding. Okay, suppose your subject has a very he has social anxiety. He is very anxious to perform publicly, right? So as a counselor you can ask your client that please perform at least for 15 minutes publicly, please perform at least for 5 minutes or 10 minutes or 15 minutes, 20 minutes publicly. Okay, you are exposing your client rapidly, intense, right, as a fear evoking object. Okay, next is systemic desensitization. So systemic desensitization is opposite of the flooding. Here you can desensitize the fear evoking flooding. Systemic sensitization can be used for anxiety disorder. Okay, flooding, systemic desensitization can be used for anxiety disorder patients. So flooding already I discussed. Next is desensitization. It is opposite of the flooding. Here we are not exposing the client or to the fear evoking object intensely or rapidly. Okay, here we are exposing the client as systematically. Suppose your client has a fear of spider, right? So you can divide your plan. You can divide your counseling procedure. How you can systematically divide it? How? first you can ask that seeing a photo of spider, how much it will create fear within you. Okay. Okay. Say seeing a photo of spider, how much it will create a fear producing response within you. Okay, so subject will respond, it will create very little amount of fear. Okay, then you ask that a spider is crawling on the wall. How it will create fear evoking response within you. Then the subject will say that it will create more fear evoking response than the see particular picture. Then you will ask the client, then if a spider crawling on your body, how it will create, how much it will create fear producing response within you. Then the client will say, I will be die if a spider will crawling on my leg. Okay, so you will say, make a series to desensitize his or her fear. Firstly, you have to train your client relaxation procedure, because relaxation procedure is a response, is a behavior after committing the behavior. Relaxation procedure, that is breathing exercise. I will teach you later on how to do relaxation procedure. Relaxation procedure is a kind of a behavior will produce very calm and soothing outcome to you. You will feel very relaxed. Suppose after performing breathing exercise, it is a behavior, you will feel very relaxed. So relaxation, your feeling of relaxation is rewarding to you. So the breathing tendency to do breathing exercise will be increased, right? So yeah, first you have to teach your subject how to do relaxation, because it will increase the muscle relaxation, your brain will be relaxed, your body will be relaxed, your fear producing responses will be decreasing. Okay, then you are giving a photo of spider to the subject, and it will create some little amount of fear producing response within your subject. Then you ask that please do breathing exercise. Please do breathing exercise. Please observe the spider, and after the spider of the picture of the spider, please observe the picture of the spider and do the relaxation procedure. Do the relaxation procedure. Because, after that, relaxation procedure will be rewarding to observing the photo of the spider. So I can observe see the photo of the spider without any fear, because already relaxation procedure create less amount of fear within me, right? Next step, after the fear producing the response become lesser after watching the photo of a particular spider, of a photo of particular spider, when after committing relaxation procedure, I will go to the next step, that I'm seeing the spider crawling on the wall, and it will create more fear within me. After seeing the spider crawling on the wall, then I will performing the relaxation procedure, because relaxation helping me to create a very calm and less fearful response. Okay. So after after performing the relaxation procedure, then I can observe the spider crawling on the wall in a less fear manner, fear response manner. Okay. So my fear response will be decreased after performing the relaxation procedure, and I can observe the spider which was very fear producing to me in a less fear manner. Okay, so this is the systemic desensitization. You understand my point? Systemic desensitization, or should I repeat?
Yes, no, ma'am, clear.
Okay, next is aversion therapy. Aversion therapy is that if you performing an unwanted behavior, then you will get an unwanted response. Like if you biting your nails, then I will give you an electric shock. but it is very unethical. I'm giving you just as an example. You won't do this. So aversive therapy, that to stop the undesirable behavior, you can provide an undesirable stimulus. So it will reduce the undesirable behavior. Right. Next is extinction. Extinction is the removal of all reinforcement. You can use the extinction for the temper tantrum child also. How? If because a child is throwing tantrum to get a chocolate. Okay, he is throwing tantrum to his mother to get the chocolate. So mother getting irritated, but still the child is shouting on the road. But to calm to relax the child, to make the to relax the child, then the mother give a chocolate to the child, because mother feel very insulting because the child is shouting on the road and it is very shameful to the mother. So mother thinks that okay, let's chalo de do, let's give the child the chocolate. Then the child will not shouting on the road. Okay, so it will reinforce the child. Then next time child will again do the same thing to get his desirable outcome. Then you have to tell the mother, then stop providing the attention. Okay, because child throwing the tantrum to get your attention, because child already know that if I'm throwing tantrum, my mother will get irritated and she will give me the thing that I want. Okay, so already it is known to the child. But if you tell the mother that don't provide the things, and if the child throwing the tantrum, don't pay your attention to the child. Keep the child constantly throwing the tantrum. After certain period of time, when the child learn that okay, if I throwing the tantrum, my mother will not pay attention to me and doesn't give me the thing that I want. After a certain period of time, the child will stop throwing the tantrum. This is the extinction process. Okay. So these are all the application you can use during the counseling procedure, right? Okay. Lastly, that is criticism. So the behavioristic process here external critics are mentioning that external reward may diminish the intrinsic motivation. Okay, and behaviorism does not count for anything that is not an observable behavior, and the mental process treat as a machine. So they denied the genetic endowment. Already I mentioned that Watson, Pavlov, everybody denied the inheritance process, the genetic process. They already accept the external environmental process. So it is the main criticism that behavioristic denied the importance of genetic endowment, right? So this is all about behavioral model. So if you have any question, please ask.
Ma'am.
Yes.
Ma'am, the flooding and the systemic desensitization both are, I think, more or less similar, as I understood. But the systemic desensitization is more systematic, step by step, and
Yes.
yes, ma'am, more elaborate way.
In case of in systemic desensitization, we are going to less fear-producing stimulus to more fear-producing stimulus. Okay, we will start less fear-producing stimulus to more fear-producing stimulus in case of systemic desensitization. But in case of flooding, we are exposing the subject, fear-producing object intensely and no a higher intensity, right?
Yes, ma'am. And I think, ma'am, the systemic desensitization is more good therapeutic approach, because flooding, I think it may cause some unnecessary increasing heart rate, unnecessary increasing pulse rate, unnecessary some clinical symptoms arising.
Hmm. Yes, exactly. Good. Exactly. So, yeah, it is already 10:05, but I just want to take more 5 minutes because I already asked that just to think an example about classical conditioning in your own way. So, you planned any example? Orpita, Darsh, Priyanka?
Yes, ma'am. One example is coming in my mind. One girl, 11-year-old girl, um, eating the roti, chapati in her house, but at that time, her parents are fighting in between them, and after a period, she hates the chapati, and she develops some symptoms which manifest the allergic manifestation, I think, and but no direct connection between chapati and allergy, but as their parents were fighting during her eating chapati, um, I mean, did this make some connection in between these two, the allergic manifestation after eating chapati, and that's why he started hating the chapati.
Nice. Nice.
And
Okay, Darsh?
yes,
Darsh, do you think any example? Orpita, have you an example?
No such example is in mind, ma'am. Now.
Okay, Darsh, there? Hello? I think Darsh is not there.
Yes,
Darsh.
ma'am.
Okay, हाँ Darsh. I think network issue, maybe. Network issue. Okay, ठीक है. So the topic of the today's class is understand by you all, right? So in next class, I will cover the some therapeutic intervention using the behavioral approach. Okay. So I will provide you this material on classroom by tomorrow morning. Please go through. Okay. Right.
ma'am, last day the class was on the anxiety rating, the depression rating, but ma'am, those questionnaire we haven't received in PDF format, ma'am. If possible, please.
Okay, I will. Okay, I will ask Priya ma'am once. Okay.
Okay, ma'am. Okay, ma'am. Thank you.
Okay. Okay, Orpita, Darsh, you understand today's topic?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am. You understood. Very clear.
Okay. Okay, thank you. Good night. Thank you for your presence. Good night.
Yes. Good night, ma'am.
Thank
Thank
you,
We
you.
will
ma'am.
have our
Thank you,
next
ma'am.
class
Good
on
night.
Tuesday. Okay, so I'm ending our class.